The Ensemble podcast is intended for professional financial advisors. All discussion is limited to publicly available information and should not be interpreted as legal, professional, or financial advice. Ensemble does not hold an AFS license nor provide any financial services. Before making investment decisions, you should obtain financial advice from a qualified financial advisor.
Hello, my name's James Wrigley. I'm a financial advisor and one of the principals of Melbourne-based financial planning firm First Financial. I've been a long-term listener and contributor to the Ensemble group and podcast, picking up some amazing nuggets of gold over the years. And through this podcast and the people that I'm able to speak to and interview, hopefully I can continue to deliver some of those nuggets of gold to you.
This episode is brought to you by Capital Group, one of the oldest and largest asset management companies in the world, managing multi-asset, equity and fixed income investment strategies for different types of investors. Since 1931, Capital Group has been singularly focused on delivering superior, consistent results for long-term investors using high-conviction portfolios, rigorous research and individual accountability.
Hello, welcome back to the podcast. I'm James Wrigley, and today I've got the pleasure of speaking with David Harris from Advice Evolution. We're going to tackle the topic of changing licensees in a minute. But David, thank you for joining me. Thanks for, agreeing to come onto the podcast. Great to have you here.
Oh, g'day, James. It's thanks for getting me on. I like the whole concept of podcasts. We do a couple of podcasts ourselves within the license, and it's the whole ensemble ideal is really resonates with us. So it's great to be on board.
Yeah, it's a fantastic group to be part of. The amount of sharing and so forth that goes on, whether it's on the web app there, in the community, the podcasts that go out. It's a big machine these days. And then the PD day that's coming up on Friday. This podcast will probably go live after the PD day has been held, but. Plenty of people coming along to that too. So thanks for joining me. I guess we tend to like to start the podcast with a bit of looking back and on your career and so forth. I was saying just before we started recording that I had a look at your LinkedIn profile, and it talks a little bit about a couple of things that you did. You started off in military, and when I read the line there about some time in the military, there seems to be quite a fair few people in financial advice that have gone on to a level of success in different forms in financial advice that have come from the military. So maybe talk us through your work experience and what's gotten you to where you are now.
Yeah, James, well, I originally, I did some time after school, I went into gun train and I found the military life quite exciting. It's one of those things where you're living with your friends, you're traveling, you're fit, you're just doing all of the most incredible things every single day. And it was amazing, but it's a single man's job.
Yeah.
I met my current wife, and we were deciding to about where we'd settle and have children. But and my mum had a little insurance business up in Guyra, actually in northern New South Wales. And she basically rang me up one day and she said, "I'm leaving. You can have it if you want. I'll leave the key on the desk." And sort of we had a bit of a discussion about that. My wife was working for one of the fundies in the city, and Rothschilds, I think, at the time. And we backed up and moved to the country, which was pretty exciting.
Yeah, right.
But it was just basically a GI book, essentially with a little bit of risk and some, those complex super policies that were going around back in the day. And so we took over that. And that was as financial planning was getting going. And I did my RG146, I think, 1 week in Sydney. And I was let loose on the public. Anyway, I had a pretty successful practice in financial planning there over quite a few years. And as I was telling you before, I tried to. We used to work on the actual business side of it and work out what change we could actually do into our business to make it more profitable and make it contemporary. We were doing soft files and all that sort of stuff 15 years ago. But we shopped it here and then one year we put it all together. We shopped it and somebody bought it. So I retired 13 years ago. And some very good friends of mine, Grant Simpson and Anthony Stedman, rang up and said, "Look, David, we need to get out of our vertically integrated current licensing model. Can you help us? Can you run the license for us so we can still run our practice? It could be a couple of days a week, 6 or 7 advisors. It'll be easy," they said. I think we're sitting at just under 70 advisors now and 46 practices. So it's a little bit busier than I thought.
So had you had so prior to going out and setting up Advice Evolution, had you had any experience on the licensing side of financial advice?
Well, so I ran so we were in Financial Wisdom, which was one of the CBA licensees at the time. And I was actually I was the chair of the advisor forum for quite a few years. And so I got a little bit of an insight as to what they were doing, albeit that license was a juggernaut and it was, got quite large there a while. And, there was all that influence of the mixed licenses because CommBank had Count, I think, at that stage, and Pathways and CBA Financial Planning. But I did get a really good insight as to what was going on.
Yep. Okay. And so a lot of the bank licenses have, in one way, shape or form been kind of wound down as financial advice has moved on over the last few years from the Royal Commission and all the rest of it. Do you get a sense of where most of those people have landed? Like where are they licensed now? Lots have gone on their own. Lots joined groups like yours. Like where are people getting their license from these days?
Look, it's a funny thing, James, and I look, it's a mix. They've gone to a lot of places. A lot of guys have tried it on their own. There's some bigger ones. Some of the bigger independent style licensees, I think they ended up going for it because I think they all realised that it was time to go out. Not many of them fell back to the IWF or to the AMP style model, and so that's what we found. We being as naive as we were at the time when we started up, we had a couple of fund managers that we had a large piece of work with put handcuffs on us when we first started the license, and they said, "Look, you need to stop stealing advisors from this location, otherwise we will stop paying you." And we went, "Can you do that?" And we didn't have the resources, the skills, or the courage to take them on.
Yeah.
So basically, they slapped the handcuffs on us and we waited. Fortunately, it was FOFA at the time, and FOFA slowed everything down quite significantly. Later, after the FOFA rules died down a little bit, we had a bit of an influx of advisors, but they'd actually been in over at that FOFA period, I think, in the larger vertically integrated licensees, didn't help them a lot. There was a lot of rules, a lot of back testing of their advice, that fee for no service. There was just a lot of punishment. And so the advisors that come out and they're just gun shy, scared, just not trusting of anybody. And it's just, so it's made it difficult for them to fit into, the old collegiate environment that, we remember licensees as being. So we're trying to sort of rebuild that. But yeah, look, ultimately we took a big swag of people just at the end of FOFA, but they've gone to a lot of places. I know Fortnum got a big whack at them too, which is good.
So when you first started out, how many years ago did you start the license?
2001, so that's 12 years.
12 years ago, yep. And just a few people, 3 or 4 people at the start?
Yeah, 2 practices.
Okay.
So there was the 2 practices that we spoke about, but then we had a few others. So there was a group in Queensland, 4 or 5 practices in Queensland, just individual advisors that joined up with us, and a couple in Melbourne, and that sort of got us going. And we sort of realised that. So then we started looking further afield and recruiting. I remember our target was 18 for 18, so we wanted 18 advisors in 2018.
Yeah, okay. and you're 70 or so now.
Yeah,
right. And how many firms is that?
46.
That's
look, the difficult thing was at the moment is that advisors are finding it hard to leak because they're leaking from the industry. And people leaking steadily from the bigger ones, a lot of them going self-licensed, but actually looking into other licensee spaces is hard for them because I find I'm sitting with licensees that are completely different to us, but we all tell the advisor the same story. And the hard bit is for them to work out who to believe. And it's so difficult to change licensees.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it too often.
No.
And obviously, if you do it too often, it shows up on the FAR register and your clients go, well, hey, why you keep changing licensee?
It starts to look a little bit funny, doesn't it? And people starting to ask what's going on here.
It is. It just becomes difficult. And that's just like any sales sort of game. But, we're trying to put our spiel together and we try to be true to it. This is pretty simple because, we've sort of set up a thing that we can deliver and now all of our advisors are completely aware of it as well. So we've got a reasonably different offering, which is good.
Yep. And now I was reading on your website, do you have a model where the advisors that are operating on their license can ultimately own part of the licensee business? Is it something that you're doing?
Yeah, that's exactly it, James. So that's one of the things. So we base our business on 4 pillars. One of the pillars is equity and control. What we allow is that they have to control their own business. They get full control of their business, but they can have equity in the license if they wish. Now, it's not compulsory and they still have to buy it at whatever the market rate is at the time. But what I find is now that once I've got, and this is the way we built it in the first place. If I'm coming to see you as the advisor and I'm doing my supervisory check, or we're doing, a file check or something like that, you actually want to be more involved. And you're actually saying, look, David, but what about this? You need to be looking into this space because, you're worried about the license just as much as I am, because we're all on the hook. And it makes it, it just really makes it much more pleasant when you're going to visit your business partners, as opposed to the draconian master servant sort of type of arrangement that you're used to in a licensee.
Yeah, you're kind of dreading when the auditor comes in and go, oh no, what are we in for now? This kind of thing. But you're involved with it as a business owner. That makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've got, everyone's still got quite a strong work. We don't have that many. Like, we've still got 32, I think, unit holders in the unit trust that owns the license. So
yep.
So you've still got a pretty loud voice.
So look, let's get into the process of changing license, as we mentioned before, as you commented, to say it's something you don't want to do too often if you can avoid it. So if you are looking to change your licensee, you ideally want to try and get that right to begin with. But maybe if we can start to get into the process. So we spoke before we started recording. I have no idea about what's involved in changing a license. I've worked in this business for 15 years or so. We were self-licensed, we went to someone else, we're now self-licensed again, but that's something that someone else has dealt with, not me. It's not a single advisor practice here. So what's the process involved in changing a license? I'm sick of these group that I'm working with. I want to come and join you. What happens? Where do we even start?
Yeah, so it's a reasonably convoluted process. Fortunately, we've got a team specifically that aimed at doing that, and we outsource a lot of our business to the Philippines, but we've been doing that for 8 years now.
Yep.
So we've got a couple of people that have been there for the whole process, and so they know how to do this really, really well. But the idea is to find out what you really want, and you'll find out, and you've got to look carefully into the actual license that you're looking at. And so, for example, we put ourselves out of there not having a conflict. Admittedly, we still pay risk commissions or accept risk commissions, but apart from that, we don't have any alliance with any product. And the reason to do that, because one of our pillars is no conflict. But what you've got to do is look at the new license and say, well, are they pushing into a product? Who's actually paying the license? Are they subsidised completely by advisor fees, or is it a product supplying it and that sort of stuff? So you've got to do your due diligence on your license, and I think that's really important. Understanding how many people have left it. Why? Getting a referral from having a yarn to someone who's actually in the license has a similar practice to you, which is a really, really valuable tool. But then what you've got to do is, once you've decided what license you're actually looking at, the hard bit is you've got to resign. And so you've got to pull your representative authorised rep agreement out and have a look at what they're going to put on you when it comes time to resign, how much notice you've got to get, and all that sort of stuff. Some licensees get really angry and they think, no, I'm going to make this as hard as I possibly can, and they start putting hoops in. Some of them say, oh, cool, we'll help you out. We don't want a bad taste in anyone's mouth. We don't want you sort of tearing around saying, this is a horrible experience. So they're reasonably amenable. But so the next step is, so you resign, and then they'll come into you and they'll tell you what you're going to require in your transfer, your standard transfer agreement. In your transfer agreement, they'll need you to write to your clients to sell them that you're leaving. Some of them will want you to want a copy of all your files, and some of them will put a requirement for you to do new SLAs on your clients. And that's the interesting one, that one. That's the complicated one. Some people like to do it, some people don't, but you're still being sort of pushed around a little bit. Then there's a matter of just moving all of your codes, coming over, and any software. So if you're being an Xplan person and the new people use AdvisorLogic or they don't use anything, then you have to decide what you're going to use is your CRM in the future. Easier these days, I think, because we have less clients. Much easier because we have less clients and you don't have that much of a trail. The product providers are really slow in moving your money over, and they'll keep paying the old licensee for a couple of months just because they're hopeless. But as a general rule, most of the money comes across reasonably quickly.
So just on that advice requirement there, as I said, I have no experience really in changing license from one to another. Are there some new licensees that won't require you to issue a new statement of advice under the new license to your existing clients?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
it seems to me that it's somewhat draconian and barely in the client's best interest for them to have to write a new SLA, especially if the advice is still current and the advisor is still the same. So that's generally it's the outgoing one which will ask you to do that. So they'll say, let's put in I need an SLA because they want to transfer the liability.
Yeah, okay.
It's all a PI thing. So if the PI is on my license, then I'm on the hook for that advice as long as it exists on that SLA. When there's a new SLA, it moves the PI risk to the new license.
So that's the break. If I'm going from licensee A to licensee B, in terms of the insurance part, it's when the new SLA's issued. Is that the?
Yeah, well, that's the advice.
Yeah, okay.
And so it's a funny one, and I'm not sure it has been tested. But if your exiting license says you have to do an SLA on all of your clients, and you don't do it, and if there's a complaint on one that you didn't do, then the liability would fall back to the previous licensee. But they could say, "But hang on, you signed a contract to say that you do an SLA, so I don't know what had actually happened there."
Yeah, right. I always thought the advice requirement was the new licensee, but it's more the old one wanting to sever the liability rather than the new one taking over.
My PI broker tells me, you don't want them to do SLA.
Yeah, because then the liability rests with the other group, not yours. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And then
there's so few PI brokers, PI insurers at the moment. I think you're still carrying the risk anyway.
Oh, weird. Ours is just we can get onto it in a minute, but it seems like the PI insurance just keeps going up and up and up each year. So how does that work? How does that work for advisors in your license? Is that cost, I would assume, gets passed through to the advisors?
No, we pick the PI up as a group policy, and we pay it. Yep. So we include it in your licensing fee. We just wanted to keep the licensing fee quite simple.
Yep.
So we just have a flat fee and an ongoing.
Yep.
Smaller. It's not a sliding one. It's just a standard. We just have a small percentage-based one. And we call the percentage base one is just generally based on that's the percentage-based costs that we're going to have to incur, things like PI and that sort of stuff. And so we just make that even across the board and come in a flat fee.
Yep.
To keep it simple. But that's the PI thing for me is it's a little bit out of control because we're bearing the PI insurers are still gun shy from the banks and the fee for no service and all the things that they got tarnished with, and it's going to be like compensation scheme of last resort and the ASIC levy, the PI we're still paying for a really rough patch, and I'd argue that most of the licensees that are left at the moment weren't responsible for a lot of that damage, but we're still having to foot the bill.
Yeah,
but that's work. That's the way we.
What is, and then it's not necessarily in your business, but just in general, because there's a lot of, I was looking through Ensemble and some of the questions around licensing that people had been asking prior to us, recording this, and lots of people talking about different prices from their licensee. Someone saying, and these are some maybe older comments, but someone saying, they're paying $40,000, someone's paying $50,000, someone's paying $60,000. It seems like quite a big range of fees that people might be paying per advisor. Do you have a sense of what an average licensee fee might be per advisor?
No. Look, I think we're a little bit on the cheap side.
Yeah.
We charge $30,000 plus 2%.
Yeah, okay.
But and that covers everything. Yeah. But a lot of other ones they'll charge a flat fee or just a flat fee, but then add on PI and add on some other costs depending on what company, might have the ASIC levy separate and that sort of thing separate. And so there's a number of different costs along the way and maybe different software. The other thing to remember too is that fee is, a lot of cases that fee can be generally subsidised by a product. So whether you've got your own SMA or you're owned by a big licensee that has some product, and that fee could be subsidised, or at least your licensee staff's income could be subsidised by the product. And so that helps, and it depends on who the profit is. Look, there's all this talk in the licensee world about how licenses can't make money. I don't. My board will probably get upset with me for publicly saying this, but we're quite profitable. So as always, so the majority of our advisors are shareholders, and those shareholders, we still return a reasonable profit.
Yeah, but I saw that on your website earlier. The question I asked you about, the advisors being part owners of the license. Somewhere on your website, I read that you were focused on having a profitable standalone licensee business that's not necessarily subsidised by other other things. It needs to be a standalone business in its own right. And then, hey, you invite some of the advisors along to be part owners of that business if they want it.
And as soon as they do that, then if they're complaining about the fees, then obviously they're picking it up in the profit margin as well. So it's still helpful. I mean, we started it's funny in the licensee level because we've had a couple of times a couple of people approach us to buy us. And I think that's what a lot of advisors are finding at the moment by going to the fear about going into a mid-sized boutique is that it gets bought by, one of the big players, and all of a sudden you're back in the fire.
Back to where you were, yeah.
or back in the fire. We decided to, our board, we actually decided to put a couple of caveats on the fact that we can be bought. And so if someone does buy us, they still have to adhere to our four pillars, which are no conflicts, which we spoke about before. We don't want to ever make money off a product. We equity and control, which we spoke about. Obviously, the advisors can have equity, and they've still got full control of their own business. An interesting one is that we don't mandate, so we don't mandate any software or any rules. So if you can justify as an advisor that it's within the regulatory guides and within the Corporations Act. So we're going to be happy and support you in that. We'll actually put resources to help you to do that because we don't want to be, we're a business partner. We don't want to be working with that. But the last one is, and the interesting one, funnily enough, it needs a lot of interpretation these days, but we say that we trust you. So we trust our advisors.
Yeah.
Whatever they tell us, we trust them.
A bit different, I would think, to a lot of other places. So you mentioned there about not too concerned about what software advisors are using. Is it mainly Xplan? Is it AdvisorLogic? You've got a bit of mix of stuff.
Well, when we originally started, we were picking up individual advisors, so individual advisor practices. And we were realizing that the cost for Xplan for a single practice, and you're not turning over that much money, was quite expensive.
Huge, yeah.
And so we were saying, well, how about we hold a copy of Xplan, and we've got a couple of people that run it, and because they're only using it for 2 or 3 different models a year, or even 5 or 6, we'll deploy it. And so we just threw that in as part of our license. So we actually started picking up a bit of a tech stack ourselves that we could offer out to some of our practices. So we offer we put out a CRM. So we own a CRM, and that's how we do our pays and all that sort of stuff. But apart from that, we've got I'd say that half of our practices don't use any software at all.
Yeah, right.
Other than the CRM. So obviously they can deal with their clients because I found we have quite a large resource in the Philippines because I was finding back when we were looking at this and building this up, the cost of software was getting ridiculous, and so I could actually throw labour at it more cheaply than I could buy the tech stack.
Yeah,
and then that became far more practical way of doing it. So we put labour at it.
So in terms of writing the advice, whether your businesses are going down the video route or doing the old Word document PDF SOAs, so that's being written in the Philippines rather than being generated through an Xplan license and then tidied up. It's being written elsewhere.
No, most of the plans are done onshore.
Okay.
So we encourage advisors to outsource to their own people in Australia. We found the Philippines paraplanning service and offshore paraplanning we didn't find very good.
Yep.
And again, it was more software dependent. There's a couple of big services in Australia that don't need any software at all. You just fill in a form. You just write down your strategy, do your comparisons or whatever you're going to do, and you flick it to them. They do your plan on whatever software they're working on.
Yeah, okay.
So you don't need to have that software to run it.
Yep.
The only thing that we've always found difficult is point of sale modeling. A lot of advisors want to either have something in front of their client to show them or be able to quickly do some models after the meeting so they can come up with the most appropriate strategy. And that's always been hard to get good modeling software that's just modeling software.
Yeah.
Everything's tapped in with 50 other a la carte services that don't necessarily make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
when they get used.
So then the data transition that I guess we're kind of talking about what's involved in the process. There's understanding what your old licensee has in terms of how long your resignation period is and what's required from there, and whether you need to issue new advice. There's the data transition. So if I'm coming from an Xplan, and we use Xplan here, so I'm kind of familiar with it. If I'm coming from an Xplan world where all of my client records and phone numbers and CRM and everything's stored in there, what's the data transition like to your systems?
Well, so we use WorkSorted. They're a mob out of Adelaide. They're pretty good, pretty simple, but they'll they'll ask you to get an export from Xplan, and then they'll code it up to go into theirs. I think it's about $1,500 each way.
Yeah.
And the Xplan will charge you about $1,500, and then the new one will charge you about $1,500 to put it in. But generally these days, the data's a lot better.
Yeah.
It's, we got really scared years ago, and I still hold the same feeling, is that I want to hold my own data. Like, I need the CRM to sort it and control it and be able to do my mail outs and things. But things like all of my documents that I sent to clients and, everything that I hold with regard to client, I want to keep that myself. So, we encourage things like a Dropbox or, or OneDrive or something like that you're actually in control of, and you just keep the data that you need in the CRM.
Yeah, because I could. That's resonating with, because you kind of end up then almost trapped into that CRM where we use Xplan. Everything's in Xplan.
That's right.
We generate advice in Xplan. We do modelling in Xplan. The client's phone numbers in Xplan. The last 10 years worth of anything that we've sent to the clients in Xplan. And so when Xplan turns around and says, "Oh, we're increasing your license fee by 50%," it's like, oh well, you just kind of just have to cop it. But
yeah, you're not nimble enough either to be able to move to somewhere else. Like if AdvisorLogic becomes great, or Plutosoft, so out of Western Australia becomes really, they become the best, which it's hard to move. It's really difficult. And you've got to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, I'm just going to pause everything there and do everything going forward, which often is the best way to do it.
So what do you think the timeframes are then? If we look at, there's these different areas of, main areas of things that need to be dealt with, and you mentioned, the platforms and so forth will take their time in switching advisor codes over to the new licensee. But what do you think the time period might be of me saying, hey, I'm going to leave whatever licensee I am, to being up and running on the new one? What do you think the time period might be?
Look, I'd say you could reasonably easily expect to do it in 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, right.
And most licensees only have a 30-day termination clause on your license. So it's generally pretty easy to move across. So from that perspective, it's not too bad. Then it'll be probably another 90 days before all of your money starts coming across to you.
Yep.
But it's both payments teams will make sure that money comes across and they get that sorted out. So it just takes a little bit of headspace. And once you got in there, you've got to make sure that you spend a day or two per week getting the thing done and not getting cooked up in your normal advice things. I think it's the investment in time to make it. I've never had someone, though, who's moved across, and this is to any licensee in my experience, said, that was the worst thing I ever did from a time perspective.
Yeah.
I think, because generally the reason that you're moving is because there's something there that's not working. And if that's not working, it's going to stay not working forever. Their distribution team's going to say, "Oh no, it's okay, James. It's fine. It'll be all good." But at the end of the day, it's still going to be niggling at you, whatever that is, for in perpetuity. So it's time to say bite the bullet and get the job done.
Yeah.
Look at a quieter time, maybe something that it's a little bit quieter, like February or something like that, when things aren't going crazy.
Yeah. So do you then on your side of people joining your license, do you find there's a busier time for people joining you through the year?
No, it's completely random.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, oh, no, I'll change at 30 June and I do everything I can to say, don't do that.
That's the worst time.
Yes. Well, it's not so bad these days, but it used to always be that you're quite busy 30 June.
Yeah,
These days, it is generally a busier time because there's a lot of reviews come up around that time. What we do is, I've just decided that I want to make it as easy as possible. And we're trying to, I'm looking at talk to business partners. So I generally throw with much resources as we can. So we have a deal. So I've got, some of my support team in the Philippines is specifically designed to help practices, because each advisor gets 10 hours of free back office support each month. We just throw that in. And so we actually use that resource to get you across. So they'll get your FSG up to running and, your business cards, if you're still using those, you're making sure all your documents, your websites and that sort of stuff are done. So, because again, we have that expertise. So we do, hold your hand. We got a girl there that's really good at it, and she holds your hand as you come across. But depending on who you're going to, how the level of service. I think a lot of licensees at the moment have quite comprehensive offboarding teams, and not such big onboarding teams.
So it doesn't sound, I appreciate the chat, because it doesn't sound as scary as what I thought it would have been. So from some of the posts that I've read on Ensemble and just talking to others in the industry, I got the sense that changing license was this big scary task that's never ending, and when are we going to see the end of this thing? But it doesn't sound like it's quite as daunting, maybe. I'm not as scared now, having spoken to you, I guess, than what I might have been speaking to you.
I think it's dependent on where you want to go, though, James. See, some of the licensees have a lot of rules. And if they've got a lot of rules, it's going to take a while to bed in. But if you're going to someone who's a little bit more boutique, which, most of the new licensees are, then, they're going to make it easy for you.
Anything else that we haven't covered that you think would be of value?
Oh, look, no, I think we've covered just about everything. Look, the only thing is that, and I read some stuff over the weekend that, where the big push at the moment is to try and get it to a place where all of our advisors are working solely for a client. And what I'm saying is that so they're not working for an AFSL and they're not working for a product. And if we push in that space, we're going to be, we're going to get to the place that we want to be. That's going to align with what everybody wants around here. But I think it comes back to each individual advisor, not trying to influence the, Steve Jones or trying to influence everything else. Just get to a point where you can work for your client without any restrictions.
Sounds like an ideal place to be. Look, David, thank you for joining me this morning to record this. If anyone wants to reach out to you, we'll put some links to your website and stuff in the show notes. But where can people find you if they want to reach out?
Advice Evolution. So I'm just David at Advice Evolution, and Brooke, my team, and everything can get up. But you should be able to Google us. I think we're doing some stuff in Google at the moment, so we might come up really early.
Up on the top of the search thing there. Yeah,
yeah. But we definitely all in listening at the Ensemble PD Day.
Yep.
You guys got big shoes to fill after last year. That was such a big event last year.
Yeah, well, it's moved, as I said. By the time this has gone live, the event will have probably happened. It's moved somewhere else. I'm in Melbourne, but I'm going up for it on Friday. It's at a different hotel somewhere or other. I've just got to work out how to get there from the airport. But yeah, I was talking to Emily, and it's an even bigger production than what the last ones were. So I'm looking forward to see what they've got organised. Should be a good day.
It's an outstanding resource for us, for the advice world.
Yeah,
it's definitely value for boutique advisors for sure.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks, David. Good to chat with you. Catch up with you another time.
Thank you.